Welcome, everyone. I'm Jo Morrison, and for over 20 years have been working within the realm of digital innovation, often exploring the strengths of technology and data to enhance people's experience of public spaces. Today, I'm here with my colleague Marissa, and together we're going to provide you with a session that informs, inspires, and helps your future projects create meaningful impact. We are part of Calvium, which is a leading digital innovation agency that cares about creating digital placemaking experiences that foster deeper connections between people and places. And we attract curious minds, both in terms of staff and in terms of our clients. We embrace difference, and we also enjoy all sorts of participatory approaches in our work. And thank you for choosing to spend your time here today exploring digital innovation in uncertain, complex, and emergent environments. And that surely describes our world as it turns, uncertain, complex, and emergent. Now, when I came up with the title for and the framing for this talk, President Biden was still in office and oversaw his administration's $370 billion package of climate incentives, which his successor calls the Green New Scam. As I speak to you, it's being claimed that African health services are at the risk of collapse in the next few years due to soaring chronic diseases. In the West, we have aggressive neoliberalism, seemingly at odds with government intervention and the public sector. And the Earth has recorded its hottest year ever in 2024, with the biggest contributor being the fossil fuel industry. And coincidentally, BP plans to slash spending on net zero technology whilst boosting its oil and gas operations, apparently with pressure to shift even more decisively towards fossil fuels being placed on BP by a US hedge fund investor. And as you know, on it goes. And times are changing very quickly and in ways that are destabilizing, geopolitically, socially, economically, environmentally. Ursula von der Leyen summed it up well when she said, "We are living in the most momentous and dangerous of times." And I'll tell you up front that the key message of today is to ask questions. Do not settle if the answers are not forthcoming or if they are insufficient. Keep asking questions. Also, ask questions of yourself, of your own worldview. You'll be amazed at how wrong some of your basic assumptions are, and take comfort from the knowledge that this is the case for virtually everyone, everywhere. I say this because last year I was privileged to be invited by the Rhodes Trust to speak at their annual Forum on Technology and Society at the University of Oxford. And whilst there, I found out about Gapminder. And Gapminder's an independent educational nonprofit fighting global misconceptions. And they've developed the Worldview Upgrader tool. So all of the learned attendees from all over the world at this prestigious event answered a series of 12 questions about the world. Basic stuff. The average score at that conference was 3. And as you can see on the right hand of the slide, this score was normal. One of the questions, in 1990, 58% of the world's population lived in low-income countries. What is the share today? Is it 9%, 37%, or 61%? 9% is correct. I don't know what you thought, but In the UK, when the same question was asked, 97% of respondents got it wrong. In Sweden, 93% got it wrong. And at the Rhodes Conference, 89% got it wrong. So most of the time, our misconceptions are not helping us. What they're actually doing, we think things are worse than they actually are. And the presenter said, lots of people misunderstand the world and misunderstand it in the same way. And she then went on to say, when we think of the world today, we get the feeling of hopelessness. Yet, when you look at the data, things aren't as hopeless as they seem. We're improving on so many fronts: poverty, health, education. Yet these aren't the stories that we hear. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the challenges that humanity faces, challenges of our own making. On a daily basis, seemingly more incredible events happen. People with extraordinary power make extraordinarily dangerous decisions, compounding our uncertainty. Indeed, many of the challenges that we face now are massively different from any that have existed for most of humanity's time on Earth. So of course we're feeling a bit uncertain and maybe a bit overwhelmed. But what we can see from the Worldview Upgrader tool is that over the years, humanity's baseline experience has been elevating, whether that's through the lens of health and well-being, or poverty, or education. So the message here is, give yourself permission to be humble. We're sitting on a load of misconceptions. Be curious. Let's find out what the facts are and work with those, and be hopeful. It's up to us to write the story of our futures collectively, and it's imperative that we innovate thoughtfully, respectfully, and at speed. And part of doing that is to have the confidence to be prepared to ask questions. This is important for digital innovation, as technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. Technology, society, and the environment are interlinked, they coexist. Whatever it is that you're designing will exist within a social and an environmental context and have impact. Therefore, if, as we've seen, your worldview, my worldview, is often mistaken, or maybe mostly mistaken, and take that to be at the grand and kind of meta level through to the local level, then it makes sense to lose or drastically reduce your misconceptions. And the way to do that is to ask questions of society and of technology. So take time to understand the context within which your technology will be experienced, and base that on research, not on assumption. Ask questions yourself, and where possible, commission research specialists such as Calvium to do so for you. And as well as asking questions about society, obviously also ask lots of questions about the technological aspects of your innovation. Now, believe it or not, that was a preamble. But that preamble sets the scene for our chief question today, and the reason you're here, which is, in an era defined by uncertainty, complexity, and rapid change, how can public sector organizations harness digital innovation with confidence? Now, this session is designed for leaders and change makers, offering some practical methods for driving impactful innovation in unpredictable UK public sector landscapes. We'll be drawing on real-world practice, and we'll explore how to navigate ambiguity, leverage digital technologies to foster resilience and transformation, and commission digital systems that are designed for uncertain futures. To set the stage for our discussion today, I'll begin by drawing on insights from 4 recent events I've attended. Here's a shot of one. The themes were public sector innovation, local economic growth, placemaking, and AI. And together they'll provide a shared context that will serve as our foundation. So while some of this may not be entirely uplifting, it is crucial for understanding the fluid landscape we're working within and ultimately for helping us to drive and achieve meaningful change. According to the National Audit Office in its recent Local Government Financial Sustainability Report, funding for local government has increased in recent years, reversing the long-term downward trend of the previous decade. However, while real terms funding has grown by 4% between 2015 to 16 and 2023 to 24, it has not kept pace with population growth or the demand for services, the complexity of need, or the cost of delivering services to most people in need of support, particularly adult and children's social care, special educational needs, disability services, and temporary accommodation. At the recent ATCM, which is the Association of Town and City Management conference, it was stated that today the UK is one of the poorest in the developed world when it comes to local government investment. And we're put at 26th out of 38 OECD countries, with investment from central government matching the OECD average of 2.2%. So public debt is also extremely high, a problem compounded by uncertainty. It makes markets nervous about government borrowing. And in the financial year 2025 to 26, the UK government has agreed to provide 30 English councils with support to manage financial pressures via the exceptional financial support process. Local government finances are so bad that some local leaders expect that they will no longer have enough money to adequately fund just statutory services, never mind discretionary services such as parks, arts and culture, libraries. And again in the report, the National Audit Office concludes that, quote, despite short-term measures to address acute funding shortfalls, there has been insufficient action to address the systemic weaknesses in local government finances sustainably. We also know that we're at the cusp of massive reform in relation to devolution in England, and exactly what system will play out remains to be seen. Again, uncertain, complex, and evolving. At the conference, Heather Jameson, who's the editor at the Municipal Journal, said, the problems are multiple and complex, and the solutions will be too. So, change we will, and digital innovation will be instrumental in providing those solutions. And in this session, I'm focusing mainly on place-based innovation, as Calvium has been working with places of all kinds since the company was founded 15 years ago, and members of the team before that. And Calvium are recognized experts in digital placemaking, having won multiple innovation awards over the years. Digital placemaking operates at the intersection of people, place, technology, and data. And I'll draw upon some of the many innovation projects that we've delivered to inform today's presentation and ensure that we are rooted in real-world practice. Now, as an activity, the doing of digital placemaking means understanding the users, the context of use, and the technology to inform and underpin location-based, digitally enabled solution. A definition of ambiguity is the presence of multiple possible interpretations or meanings in a given situation, statement, or piece of information. In professional contexts, ambiguity can arise from unclear communication, complex data, or uncertain circumstances, requiring critical thinking, collaboration, and adaptability to navigate effectively. So we're talking about analyzing information objectively, asking questions to challenge assumptions, making reasoned decisions based on evidence and creativity. And I define ambiguity because at this point we are in our navigating ambiguity section. And to do that, I'm going to introduce you to the Lost Palace. This is a site-specific augmented reality theatrical experience that took part in Whitehall, London. It enables visitors to experience a heritage site that no longer exists, as the palace itself was burnt down 300 years ago, leaving just a banqueting hall there today. Now, through crafted place-based storytelling and the creative use of custom handheld objects, which you can see here in the slide, binaural 3D sound and haptic technology, as well as GPS and near-field communication, the Lost Palace takes participants on a mile-long journey around Whitehall to witness history in the making, exactly where it happened 300 years ago. Now, it was commissioned by Historic Royal Palaces, who wanted to find a way to bring the visitor experience to life of a palace that no longer exists. And they wanted to run it as an actual bookable experience that could run over the summer. And in fact, it did so for a couple of years. It was so successful that it reran the next year. So Calvium collaborated on this digital innovation project with the Historic Royal Palaces, the theatre company Uninvited Guests, and creative technologists Chomko and Rosier, who created those handheld objects. Now, to get a sense of the unique performance, because it's really hard, as you can tell, to explain, here's a short video of the clip. Here's a short video clip, a short clip of the video.
Between the dragon and his wrath! I loved her most, and thought to set my rest on her kind nursery. Hence!
Writing to a madman.
Show over here.
And it was Her Majesty, Catherine of Braganza.
Yes! He opened the door and saw it was the Queen conspiring there with some Catholic priests.
But
What is this debauchery that I hear tell of at the Cock-Inn for which you were indicted? Please, tell all!
Charles and I dined at the Cock.
Sarah!
There we go. I think let's leave on debauchery and get back to user-centered design, which is a familiar approach employed by design teams the world over, whether producing a service, systems design, a product, or augmented reality experience. Most of the time, the focus is on the end user. And for a project such as this, typically, the technical solutions devised would be a response to the perceived needs of the visitors to the project site, such as this pair here. However, Calvium's invention through emergence approach takes an holistic stance, embracing all project stakeholders as users. In this case, the creative and the technical teams that I mentioned earlier, the cultural institution, the Historic Royal Palaces, and the visitors. And so the resulting technical solutions produced throughout the duration of a project's development will not attend solely to the experience of the visitors, but to all the users. Now, in the case of the Lost Palace, all of the project partners came with deep experience of their subject areas and naturally used their own individual working processes that were specific to their practice. That's why they are the experts. Why would you want them to change that? When we mapped those different processes at the start of the commission, it was clear that there was a misalignment between the project partners. For instance, this mismatch meant that critical information needed by the technical team would need the script writers to deliver their content early in the project cycle, which would significantly hamper their creative work. It was also clear that the script writers required multiple and fast iterations when writing their script and needed to test it out quickly and sometimes in situ. Again, the familiar tech development process would not have allowed this. So we could have chosen to have a pretty bad experience for everybody, or what we did do, which we observed the behaviors and we anticipated the future needs of all project stakeholders during the project. And through doing so, Calvium invented bespoke software that enhanced multidisciplinary collaborative experimentation as the Lost Palace evolved. We invented the script engine. It's a platform and it enables the creative teams to experiment at will with all aspects of the experience design. The software, the script engine, acted as an enabler to the creative process and helped to advance the project. The creative team could develop, test, and change their ideas quickly in their natural way of working, and at the same time, the technical team could get on with development. The experience of the Lost Palace reveals the value of this approach, which led to a smoother content production process, enabled better live deployment, and ultimately resulted in a richer and more engaging visitor experience. Now, Calvium's invention through emergence is not a specific method or set of methods. Rather, it's a practical approach underpinned by a philosophy that embraces multidisciplinary co-creation and the irrepressible desire to develop bespoke technical solutions that improve the experiences of all project participants. And it works. As our client said, the result is a triumph and shows the benefits of both collaboration and investing in R&D. What could have been another unremarkable museum app is instead something truly memorable and immersive. A takeaway here for enabling successful digital innovation is choose your digital innovation partners well. And that means people who are creative and critical users of technology, adept developers of new software solutions, experienced multidisciplinary collaborators, and familiar of working both in an R&D environment and in commercial delivery. The Lost Palace is a perfect example of navigating ambiguity by employing critical thinking, collaboration, and adaptability. Which brings us on to procurement. Digital innovation such as the Lost Palace project that was truly groundbreaking won countless awards. And if I looked on a public sector tender portal today, I can guarantee that not one tender would be procured in a way that would allow the Lost Palace to happen, or would allow for other truly innovative solutions to emerge based on an approach and an intended purpose. which to me is bonkers and out of step with great practice. The UK public sector spends over £380 billion annually with the private sector. The way these contracts are brought to market has the power to generate new ideas and new ways of working, improving productivity, service outcomes, and policy goals like the net zero transition. The recent Procurement Act 2023 aims to provide public sector procurement teams with greater freedom and flexibility so that they can design procurement processes that meet their particular needs and foster innovation. I have high hopes that this new act and the work of the Innovation Procurement Empowerment Centre will mean that those of you who are responsible for commissioning digital innovation projects will be supported to do so. Now, whilst not historically viewed as glossy or sexy, procurement done well is a critical tool in enabling the creativity, in the enabling of creativity, and therefore of digital innovation. And a good thing to know is that there is support presently for councils in tackling complex challenges through innovation procurement. Now, reading from the IPEC website, this fully funded programme is designed to enhance the confidence and capabilities of professionals across procurement, legal, finance, transformation, and service delivery. By working alongside councils on live end-to-end procurement processes, we help unlock new opportunities, accelerate culture shifts, and drive lasting change. If your council is looking to procure innovation, attract new resources, or secure sponsorship to address a pressing challenge, we invite you to join us on this journey. What a great opportunity. So if that tickles your taste buds, I think Marissa will put, or probably has already put, a link in the chat. So my message here is to get really interested in procurement. Find ways to ensure that procurement supports creativity and innovation and does not stifle it. Knowing that we are operating in uncertain and fluid times, start to develop new ways of procuring. Be that agent of change. Don't assume that it's for others to make happen or you don't have the authority. If you identify a weakness or a void, ask yourself, can I make the necessary change help? Can I help it or can I make it happen? Remember also that you can't take it all on. Focus on one or two things. And I'll give you an example, which isn't digital, but it's a great example of a few people making a positive change to an existing industry-wide framework. Being those big, beautiful, bold agents of change. So quickly, the RIBA plan of work, so RIBA is the Royal Institute of British Architects, and they have a plan of work, and that organises the process of briefing, designing, constructing and operating building projects, and it's cut into 8 stages across the life cycle of a built environment project of any scale. So it goes from initial ideas and design to construction and management and stewardship. And it's used by architects, by civil engineers, by quantity surveyors, the construction industry, and so forth. Now, the Association of Collaborative Design, which is a small volunteer-led community interest company, identified the omission in the plan of work of community engagement. Now, that was 4 years ago, and now there is a formal mechanism to include engagement in each of those 8 stages. It's called the Engagement Overlay to the RIBA Plan of Work and was co-authored by the ACD and Sustrans, the active travel charity, in partnership with RIBA. And in 2024, when it launched, it was highly commended at the Healthy City Design Awards, and it's out in the world and making a difference. As you can see here in this blog post that I was invited to write for the Landscape Institute. So, if you identify something in the public sector system that needs changing, ask, how might you be that agent of change? We're now moving on to the next section, which is leveraging digital technologies to foster resilience and transformation. We're in the Public Sector AI Week. Thank you, digital leaders. And here's a slide that reminds us of the speed of change since the 80s, when we first had the graphical user interface, to the 90s when we were introduced to the internet browser, smartphones in the noughties. The field of AI has seen significant advancements in the last decade. The most salient developments include advancements in big data, in deep learning, computational power, and generative AI, which was suddenly, and in my opinion, recklessly released into the wild in 2022. So technologically speaking, nowadays we are indeed in uncertain, complex, and emergent environments. Artificial intelligence is advancing at an incredible pace, becoming widespread, influential, and contested. While it has the potential to empower people and impact societies for the better, AI's ethical implications, power imbalance, and far-reaching impact demand careful and urgent reflection. As AI continues to influence our world, we must approach its potential with ambition and with responsibility, ensuring that power and decision-making in relation to AI are not exploited by the few major players. Now, at the same time, these systems are less and less predictable to people, to most people, particularly like, generative AI. For example, it's not always clear why certain algorithmic recommendations or decisions are made, raising really important questions about explainability, accountability, and trust. Key considerations for public sector professionals engaging with AI-driven systems. By using data to train algorithms, insights are generated, predictions made, and we are told performance optimized. However, ultimately, the quality and quantity of data determine the accuracy, reliability, and fairness of these outputs. The Ada Lovelace Institute recently published a blog that said, there is certainly an opportunity for the change of government to make a shift of public sector AI policy towards longer-term and more strategic ends. But seizing this opportunity will require a clear-eyed account of where we are and a realistic assessment of what makes these technologies work when embedded into public services. Princeton's Center for Information Technology Policy has published a paper that says, since AI refers to a vast array of technologies and applications, most people cannot yet fluently distinguish which types of AI are actually capable of functioning as promised and which types are simply snake oil. The co-director of the Centre for Global Law and Innovation at the University of Bristol recently wrote, public buyers do not have the right tools to regulate AI by contract. A first constraint derives, again, from the gap in public sector digital skills, which prevents the public buyer from adequately understanding the technologies it seeks to buy. The public buyer risks procuring AI it does not understand, which is already a widespread phenomenon in the public sector. So surely it's incumbent on all of us to use AI responsibly and once again to ask questions. Where does the training data for these foundational models come from? And how is its provenance verified? Challenge assumptions. Forge new connections. Imagine new possibilities. Ask questions. Seek clarity. And beware of gloss. The Open Data Institute and other excellent organizations has a range of courses which are free and may be of interest to you. At which point, I'll turn briefly to Calvium's own platform called Navigating Stations, Navsta. And I'm going to use this as an example, not of AI, but of the importance of being able to interrogate data sets and not simply assume that the data that you're presented with is accurate. So Navsta is an example of co-designing a wayfinding app with the audience who are the intended primary end users, neurodivergent people in this context. It shows how inclusive research and co-design can lead to the creative and thoughtful application of digital technologies to make spaces more accessible for all. Now, at the moment, people in London are able to plan their journey and travel using digital tools, but not for their whole journey, such as at railway stations, when reliable indoor wayfinding tools are needed. This means that many people with less visible disabilities simply don't travel, as to do so causes really high anxiety. So they don't go to museums, don't access jobs, and so forth. And Navsta plugs this gap and provides the necessary tools to help people plan their journey through a station, undertake their journey, and manage uncertainty during a journey. And here are a few screen grabs from the app interface. As you can see, it provides information about Canada Water Station, which is part of London Underground, and it does so using text, audio, and imagery. Now, in this architecture diagram, which shows the system of the Navsta system, you can see the Transport for London's Unified API, which is the grey circle in the kind of upper left-hand corner. And the Unified API is linked in this diagram to the passenger app that you've just seen. If we had not been able to interrogate the data set that the API provides, that TfL provides, and we simply chose to plug it into the Navsta app, then we would have presented some false data to the users, because at the time, TfL's API said that Canada Water Station had toilets, which it did not. And we found that out because we scrutinized the data. So people with visible and less visible disabilities would have planned their travel journeys expecting toilets to be available at Canada Water. And this situation could have caused people harm. We did not connect to the TfL Unified API. Why? As I said, because we were able to view the data and check its accuracy. To leverage digital technologies to foster resilience and transformation, it's essential that the data upon which your innovation relies, whether AI or not, is robust, is ethical, unbiased, able to be scrutinized. That you understand its provenance. And finally, the last section. Commissioning digital systems that are designed for uncertain futures. This is simple. Make sure that you work with digital innovators who ask you questions, who are curious about your response, and might say, what if we tried this? Or Oh, that sparks an idea about that. Remember, it's up to us to write the story of our futures collectively and to innovate with care. Join me and Marissa in being big, bold, beautiful agents of change. Society needs you. And call the Calvium team to help you innovate. Stay safe and thank you.